The morning sun cast long shadows across the rugged mountains of Afghanistan as Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez adjusted his scope for the 100th time that week. His hands, steady as a surgeon's, trembled slightly with frustration. 3 weeks into what should have been a routine reconnaissance mission, his elite SEAL sniper team was failing miserably. "Another miss," whispered Petty Officer Jake Thompson, lowering his binoculars. "That's the 4th insurgent who slipped away this week." Rodriguez clenched his jaw. In his 8 years as a Navy SEAL sniper, he had never experienced such a streak of failures. His team, once considered among the most lethal marksmen in the military, couldn't seem to hit targets that should have been easy shots. The Taliban fighters they were tracking seemed to know their every move, disappearing like ghosts into the mountainous terrain whenever the SEALs got close. The mission was critical. Intelligence had identified a high-value target operating in the region, a bomb maker responsible for dozens of IED attacks that had claimed American and Allied lives. The man went by the code name The Engineer, and he was proving as elusive as smoke in the wind. "Sir, we've got movement on the ridgeline," reported Corporal Danny Hayes, the team spotter. 2 figures, approximately 800 meters northeast. Rodriguez swung his rifle toward the coordinates, peering through his advanced optics. 2 men in traditional Afghan clothing were moving carefully along a goat path, one carrying what appeared to be a heavy pack. The distance was challenging, but well within his capabilities, or at least it should have been. "Wind speed?" Rodriguez asked, his voice barely audible. 3 to 5 knots, variable direction," Hayes responded, consulting his instruments. Rodriguez made his calculations, accounting for bullet drop, wind drift, and atmospheric conditions. Everything looked perfect. He controlled his breathing, found his natural respiratory pause, and gently squeezed the trigger. The bullet sailed wide, striking a boulder several feet to the left of the targets. The men immediately dropped their packs and scattered, disappearing into a maze of rocks and crevices within seconds. "Damn it!" Rodriguez slammed his fist against the ground. That shot should have been automatic. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Williams, the team leader, crawled over to Rodriguez's position. At 32, she was young for her rank, but had earned every stripe through exceptional leadership and tactical brilliance. However, even her strategic mind couldn't solve the mystery of their recent failures. "Rodriguez, you're one of the best shooters I've ever worked with," she said quietly. "Your record speaks for itself. Something else is going on here." "Ma'am, with respect, I know my capabilities. I made shots twice that distance in worse conditions. But ever since we arrived in this sector, it's like every shot is cursed." Williams studied the terrain through her own optics. The mountains rose like jagged teeth against the azure sky, creating a labyrinth of valleys, caves, and hidden passages. Local intelligence suggested the area had been used by fighters for generations, passed down through families who knew every stone and shadow. "Hayes, what's our mission success rate since arriving in Sector 7? Williams asked. The young corporal consulted his logbook. "Ma'am, we've attempted 9 confirmed shots on high-value targets. 0 successful neutralizations. We've also lost visual contact with 14 suspected insurgents who should have been easy tracking targets." The numbers were devastating. In their previous deployments, this team had maintained a 93% success rate. They were hand-picked operators, the cream of the crop, yet they were performing worse than fresh recruits. "There's got to be a leak," suggested Thompson. "Someone's feeding them information about our positions and timing." Williams shook her head. "Our mission parameters are compartmentalized. Only our unit and command know our specific objectives and movements. The leak would have to come from within our own ranks." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. These men had served together for years, trusted each other with their lives countless times. The suggestion that one of them might be compromised was almost unthinkable. As they prepared to move to their next observation point, Rodriguez noticed something that made his blood run cold. On a distant ridge, barely visible even with their advanced optics, a figure stood motionless. The person appeared to be watching them, studying their movements with the same intensity they use to track their targets. "Williams, check your 2 o'clock ridge line, approximately 1,200 meters," Rodriguez whispered urgently. Williams swung her scope around and located the figure. Even at that distance, she could tell it was someone with military bearing. The way they stood, the purposeful stillness, the obvious familiarity with observation techniques. "Definitely not a local farmer," she murmured. "That's someone with training. Should we engage?" Rodriguez asked, already calculating the extreme long-range shot. "Negative. At that range, in these winds, with our recent performance issues, we'd just be announcing our position. Let's observe and see what they do." For nearly an hour, the figure remained motionless, clearly conducting their own surveillance. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the person melted back into the landscape, disappearing so smoothly it was like they had never been there at all. "Professional," Hayes commented. "Whoever that was knows fieldcraft." Williams made a decision that would prove crucial in the days to come. "We're going to change our entire approach. Someone out there is outplaying us at our own game, and I intend to find out who and how." That evening, as the team established their temporary base camp in a hidden valley, Williams reviewed their intelligence files for the 100th time. The engineer remained their primary target, but she was beginning to suspect that their failures weren't just bad luck or equipment malfunction. Someone was actively countering their operations with a level of skill that suggested military training. "Ma'am," Rodriguez approached her position where she sat studying maps by the dim glow of a red-filtered flashlight. "I've been thinking about today's miss. I've made that exact shot dozens of times. The conditions were perfect, my equipment is zeroed correctly, but it felt wrong the moment I pulled the trigger." "Explain what you mean by felt wrong," Williams said, looking up from the topographical charts. "It's hard to describe, ma'am, but I had this sensation that I was being watched, analyzed. Like someone was studying my technique, my breathing pattern, maybe even predicting my shot placement. I've never experienced anything like it." Williams nodded thoughtfully. Rodriguez was too experienced and too professional to dismiss such observations lightly. If he sensed something unusual, it deserved serious consideration. "Tomorrow we're going to try something different," she announced to the gathered team. "We're going to assume that someone is actively working against us, someone with advanced training and intimate knowledge of sniper tactics. We're going to set a trap." The plan Williams outlined was risky but brilliant. Instead of pursuing their original targets, they would create a false mission profile, complete with fake radio traffic and obvious movement patterns. They would appear to be stalking a high-value target in one location while actually positioning themselves to observe whoever might be shadowing them. "If someone is tracking our operations," Williams explained, "we're going to turn the tables and track them instead." As the team prepared for sleep, each man checked and rechecked his equipment with the obsessive attention to detail that had kept them alive through multiple deployments. But tonight, there was an additional tension in the air, the knowledge that somewhere in these mountains, an unknown adversary was playing a deadly game of chess with them. Rodriguez lay in his sleeping bag, staring up at the star-filled Afghan sky, and wondered if he was losing his edge. At 29, he was still in his prime, his reflexes sharp, and his mind clear. But the recent failures gnawed at his confidence like acid eating through metal. He thought about his wife, Maria, back home in San Diego, and their 3-year-old daughter, Sophia. Before this deployment, Sophia had drawn him a picture of a soldier with a big smile, holding hands with a little girl. "Come home safe, Daddy," she had whispered as he tucked the drawing into his gear. The memory strengthened his resolve. Whatever was happening in these mountains, whoever was playing games with his team, he would figure out. He was a United States Navy SEAL, trained to adapt and overcome any challenge. Tomorrow would bring answers, one way or another. In the distance, a night bird called across the valleys, its cry echoing off the stone walls like a warning. Rodriguez closed his eyes and began his mental preparation for the mission ahead, unaware that high above them, on a ridge they couldn't see, someone else was also planning for tomorrow's deadly game of cat and mouse. The second day of Williams' trap operation began before dawn, with the team moving through the mountain passes like shadows. They had spent hours the previous evening crafting a believable deception, fake radio chatter about tracking a bomb-making cell to a village 3 kilometers from their actual position, obvious movement patterns that any skilled observer would detect, and deliberate equipment signatures designed to draw attention. Meanwhile, the real operation positioned Rodriguez and Hayes in a concealed overwatch position on a ridge that offered commanding views of multiple approach routes. If someone was indeed tracking their movements, Williams believed they would reveal themselves trying to counter what appeared to be a high-priority target engagement. Rodriguez had never felt so exposed despite being perfectly camouflaged. Their hide site was expertly constructed, invisible from any normal observation. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that unfriendly eyes were studying every detail of their position. His usually rock-steady hands showed the slightest tremor as he adjusted his scope settings. Movement, 11 o'clock, approximately 600 meters, Hayes whispered, his voice barely audible even at close range. Rodriguez shifted his aim to the coordinates and immediately spotted the figure. Unlike the previous day's distant observer, this person was moving with purpose through the rocky terrain, clearly attempting to reach an elevated position that would provide observation of Williams' fake operation. Definitely military movement, Rodriguez confirmed. Professional spacing, using cover and concealment correctly, carrying what looks like precision rifle equipment. For the first time in weeks, Rodriguez felt confident about a shot. The range was moderate, the wind conditions were stable, and his target was moving predictably through terrain he had studied extensively. He began his shooting sequence, controlling his breathing and finding his natural respiratory pause. But as his finger moved toward the trigger, something extraordinary happened. The figure below suddenly changed direction, abandoning their apparent objective and moving directly toward better cover. The timing was impossible. There was no way the person could have detected Rodriguez's position or intention from that distance. "What the hell?" Rodriguez muttered, watching his target disappear into a cluster of boulders that would make any shot impossible. "Did you see that?" Hayes asked incredulously. It was like they knew exactly when you were about to shoot. Rodriguez felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. In his years of combat experience, he had never encountered an opponent who seemed able to anticipate his actions with such precision. It defied every tactical principle he had learned. "Hayes, get on the radio. Tell Williams we need to abort the operation and consolidate at Rally Point 3. As they began their careful withdrawal from the observation post, Rodriguez caught a glimpse of movement that made him freeze completely. On a ridge nearly 1,000 meters away, a figure briefly appeared in his scope. For just a moment, he could see enough detail to confirm his growing suspicion. The person carried equipment that looked remarkably similar to his own advanced sniper system. But it was more than the equipment that troubled him. Even at that extreme distance, there was something about the figure's posture and movement that seemed familiar, though he couldn't identify why. The person moved with a fluidity and confidence that spoke of extensive training and combat experience. "Rodriguez, we need to move," Hayes urged. Williams is reporting unusual activity around the fake target site, too. They conducted a textbook withdrawal, using every technique they had learned about avoiding detection while moving through hostile territory. Yet Rodriguez couldn't escape the sensation that their every step was being observed and cataloged by an intelligence far superior to anything they had encountered before. The team reunited at Rally Point 3, a hidden cave system that provided excellent concealment and multiple escape routes. Williams' expression was grim as she briefed them on the morning's events. "Someone definitely took the bait," she reported. "But instead of moving to counter our fake operation, they seemed more interested in studying our tactics and techniques." Thompson observed what appeared to be a lone individual conducting detailed surveillance of our stage positions from multiple angles. "Ma'am, I think we're dealing with a sniper," Rodriguez said, then described his own observations from the Overwatch position. Someone with training that's at least equal to ours, possibly superior. Williams absorbed this information with the calm, analytical mind that had made her one of the youngest female officers to command a SEAL unit. If there's a hostile sniper operating in this area, it explains our recent failures. They've been studying us, learning our patterns and capabilities. But how? Thompson asked. We've been following standard operating procedures, changing our routes and timing, maintaining proper communication security. Because, Williams said slowly, we've been thinking like Americans fighting insurgents. But what if we're actually fighting someone with formal military training? Someone who understands our doctrine because they learned from similar sources. The implications were staggering. If Williams was correct, they weren't facing a Taliban fighter with basic marksmanship skills, but a trained military sniper who understood advanced tactics, equipment, and fieldcraft. Such an opponent would require completely different countermeasures. There's something else, Rodriguez added reluctantly. When I spotted the figure on the distant ridge, there was something familiar about their movement. I can't explain it, but something about their stance and the way they handled their rifle seemed recognizable. Williams studied Rodriguez's face carefully. His instincts had saved their lives multiple times during previous deployments, and she had learned to trust his observations even when they seemed impossible to explain logically. We're going to assume we're facing a professionally trained sniper, she decided. That means changing everything. Our movement patterns, our communication protocols, our engagement techniques. If someone wants to play this game at an advanced level, we'll accommodate them. Over the next several hours, Williams completely restructured their operational approach. Instead of the traditional hunter-killer tactics they had been employing, she designed a complex operation based on counter-sniper techniques typically used against peer-level military opponents. The plan involved multiple false positions, coordinated movement timing designed to confuse anyone conducting surveillance, and a sophisticated communication system that would make it nearly impossible for an observer to determine their actual intentions. Most importantly, they would attempt to draw their opponent into a position where the team's numerical advantage could be decisive. If there's really a military-trained sniper out there, Williams explained, we need to remember that they're operating alone. That's both their greatest advantage and their critical weakness. They can remain hidden and mobile, but they can't be in multiple places simultaneously. As evening approached, Rodriguez found himself studying the surrounding terrain with new eyes. Every ridge, every cluster of rocks, every shadowed valley now represented a potential hide site for an opponent who understood the same principles he did. It was like playing chess against a master who knew all the same opening moves and strategic concepts. Rodriguez. Williams approached his position as he cleaned his rifle with meticulous care. I want you to think about something. You said the figure's movement seemed familiar. I need you to dig deeper into that observation. Ma'am, I've been trying to identify what triggered that reaction, but I can't pin it down. It was just a feeling, something about the way they moved that seemed like I'd seen it before. Could it be someone you train with? Someone you've observed during exercises or previous deployments? Rodriguez considered the possibility carefully. In his career, he had worked with snipers from multiple units, SEALs, Army Rangers, Marine Force Reconnaissance, even allied forces from various nations. The advanced techniques they had observed could have come from any number of military training programs. It's possible, ma'am, but that would mean... He trailed off as the implications became clear. That would mean we're potentially facing a friendly-turned-hostile, someone with intimate knowledge of our tactics and capabilities, Williams finished grimly. The possibility hung between them like a dark cloud. In the complex world of modern warfare, such scenarios were not unheard of. Soldiers who had become disillusioned, captured personnel who had been turned, or even deeper cover operations that had gone wrong. All were documented realities of contemporary conflict. Tomorrow we find out, Williams declared. I'm tired of being outmaneuvered by shadows. We're going to force a confrontation on our terms. That night, as Rodriguez lay in his sleeping position, he tried to analyze every detail of what he had observed. The way the figure had held their rifle, the spacing of their steps, the method they used to transition between positions. Every element seemed to echo something from his own training and experience. He thought about the advanced marksmanship courses he had attended, the elite schools where the military's best snipers gathered to learn and compete. Had he encountered this mysterious opponent during one of those training rotations? Was someone he had shared coffee with, competed against, or learned from now hunting his team in these remote mountains? The questions multiplied in his mind, each more troubling than the last. But beneath the uncertainty, Rodriguez felt his competitive instincts awakening. Throughout his career, he had thrived on challenging missions and difficult opponents. If someone wanted to test his skills against theirs, he was ready to accept that challenge. In the distance, the night sounds of the Afghan mountains created a natural symphony, whined through stone passages, the distant call of nocturnal creatures, the subtle settling sounds of rocks cooling after the day's heat. But somewhere in that acoustic landscape, Rodriguez knew, was another professional who was probably conducting their own planning and preparation for tomorrow's deadly engagement. The game was about to reach its climax, and Rodriguez intended to ensure that his team would emerge victorious, regardless of who or what they were facing in these unforgiving mountains. The third morning dawned with an unusual stillness that set every man's nerves on edge. Williams had designed what she called the ultimate sniper's duel, a complex operation that would force their mysterious opponent to reveal themselves or abandon their area of operations entirely. The plan required splitting the team and using advanced counter-sniper tactics that pushed the boundaries of their training. Rodriguez and Hayes took positions on opposite sides of a valley where intelligence suggested the engineer might be operating. Thompson and Williams established overwatch positions that could observe both sniper teams and the likely approach routes any hostile observer would use. The arrangement created multiple intersecting fields of fire and observation zones that would make it nearly impossible for a single opponent to monitor all positions simultaneously. All stations, this is Control. Williams' voice crackled through their encrypted communications. Operation Dragon Hunt is a go. Execute your phases on my mark. Rodriguez settled into his carefully prepared position, a hide site that had taken him 3 hours to construct the previous night. Every detail had been planned to provide maximum concealment while offering clear sight lines to the target area. His rifle was zeroed perfectly, his equipment organized with obsessive precision, and his mental focus was sharper than it had been in weeks. Dragon 1. I have movement in Sector 7. Hayes reported from his position 800 meters away. Single individual, moving with extreme caution toward the valley floor. Rodriguez swung his scope toward the coordinates and immediately spotted the figure. This time, the person was close enough for him to observe detailed tactics and techniques. What he saw made his blood run cold with recognition. The figure moved using a technique called sniper stalk, a method of traversing open ground that was taught only at the most advanced military schools. More specifically, they were using a variation that Rodriguez had learned at a classified training facility in North Carolina, a technique that was known only to a handful of elite snipers from various special operations units. Control, this is Dragon 1, Rodriguez whispered urgently. The hostile is using advanced U.S. military movement techniques. Definitely someone with formal training from our schools. Copy, Dragon 1. Continue observation and prepare for engagement on my command. Rodriguez tracked the figure as they methodically worked their way toward what appeared to be an ideal sniper position overlooking the valley. Every movement demonstrated professional-level fieldcraft, proper use of terrain, excellent timing, and an obvious understanding of how to avoid detection by trained observers. But as Rodriguez prepared his shot, something happened that would change everything. The figure suddenly stopped, stood up slightly, and seemed to look directly at his position despite being over 600 meters away. Then, impossibly, the person began making hand signals. Rodriguez felt his world tilt as he recognized the signals. They were standard U.S. military tactical hand signs, specifically the sequence used to identify friendly forces in situations where verbal communication was impossible. The message was clear and unmistakable. Friendly forces. Ceasefire. Request communication. Control. You're not going to believe this, Rodriguez reported, his voice tight with shock. The hostile is signaling friendly identification using our own tactical signs. Say again, Dragon 1. Ma'am, someone down there is using proper U.S. military identification signals. They're requesting communication, not engagement. Williams' response was immediate and decisive. All stations, hold fire but maintain readiness. Dragon 1, acknowledge their signal and see what they want to communicate. Rodriguez used his rifle scope to send the appropriate response signals, indicating that he had received their message and was willing to communicate. The figure below responded with a longer sequence of hand signals that nearly made Rodriguez drop his rifle in amazement. The message spelled out, Sergeant First Class Elena Martinez, U.S. Army Special Forces. Working deep cover operation. Request immediate face-to-face meeting to discuss mutual target. Rodriguez's hands shook as he relayed the message to Williams. Elena Martinez, he knew that name. She was a legend in the special operations community, one of the first women to complete the Army's elite sniper course, and a veteran of multiple classified deployments. But, according to official records, Elena Martinez had been killed in action in Syria 2 years earlier. Control, I know who this is, Rodriguez transmitted. Elena Martinez was supposedly Kia in Syria in 2023. If that's really her down there, someone has been lying to us about what happened. Williams' response came after a long pause. Dragon 1, conduct the meeting, but maintain extreme caution. Dragon 2, maintain overwatch on the meeting site. If this goes bad, you have authorization to engage immediately. Rodriguez began his careful descent toward the valley floor, his mind racing with possibilities. Elena Martinez had been one of the most skilled operators in the entire U.S. military, with a reputation for impossible shots and innovative tactics. If she was alive and operating in this area, it would explain everything they had experienced over the past several weeks. The meeting site was a small cluster of rocks that provided natural concealment from aerial observation while allowing both parties to maintain defensive positions. Rodriguez arrived first, his rifle ready, but not directly threatening, his senses hyper-alert for any sign of deception or ambush. When Elena Martinez finally appeared, Rodriguez felt a mixture of relief and continued wariness. She looked exactly as he remembered from her classified file photos. Average height, athletic build, with the controlled movements of someone comfortable with violence. But there were changes too. Her face was harder, her eyes constantly scanning for threats, and she carried herself with the wariness of someone who had been operating alone in hostile territory for an extended period. Sergeant Rodriguez, she said quietly, settling into a position that allowed her to watch his back while they talked. I know this is confusing, but I need you to listen carefully because we don't have much time. Ma'am, according to official records, you died 2 years ago in Syria. According to official records, yes. In reality, I was captured, spent 8 months in various prisons, then escaped, and have been operating deep cover ever since. My death was a convenient fiction that allowed me to pursue targets without the constraints of official oversight. Rodriguez studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. Elena Martinez had always been known for her directness and honesty, qualities that had made her both an effective soldier and a trusted teammate. What he saw now was someone who had been through hell, but remained fundamentally the same person he remembered. What's your connection to our mission? Rodriguez asked. The engineer, the bomb maker you're tracking, is my primary target as well. But he's not just a Taliban operative. He's a former Afghan National Army officer who we trained before he switched sides. More importantly, he's been using American equipment and intelligence that was supposed to be destroyed when we withdrew. The implications hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. If Elena was correct, their target had access to U.S. military technology and potentially classified information about American tactics and capabilities. That would explain how the engineer had been able to evade capture for so long despite intensive hunting efforts. "How long have you been tracking us?" Rodriguez asked. 3 weeks. I've been trying to determine if your team was genuine or if you were some kind of false flag operation. The quality of your tactics and equipment suggested legitimate U.S. military, but I've learned to be suspicious of everyone in this theater. Rodriguez suddenly understood the pattern of their recent failures. You've been testing us, making sure we missed our shots, studying our techniques, evaluating our capabilities. Elena nodded grimly. I needed to know if you were professionals I could work with or potential threats I needed to neutralize. Your team's skill level and adherence to proper military protocols convinced me you were legitimate. Why reveal yourself now? Because the engineer is planning something big. My intelligence suggests he's preparing to move a large quantity of advanced explosives to a target in Kabul. If we're going to stop him, we need to coordinate our efforts immediately. Rodriguez activated his radio to bring Williams into the conversation. As the team leader listened to Elena's briefing, a complex picture emerged of a rogue military officer with access to American weapons and intelligence, operating from a network of caves and safe houses that have been developed over decades of conflict. If what you're telling us is accurate, Williams said over the radio, this target is beyond the scope of our current mission parameters. We'll need to call in additional support. Negative, Elena replied. The moment you involve higher command, bureaucracy takes over and the engineer disappears permanently. He has sources inside the Afghan government and possibly within our own intelligence apparatus. This has to be handled quietly and quickly. Rodriguez found himself caught between military protocol and operational necessity. Elena Martinez was proposing they conduct an unauthorized mission against a target who potentially posed a significant threat to American lives. The decision violated numerous regulations and could destroy all their careers if it went wrong. But as he looked at Elena's scarred face and remembered the American casualties caused by the engineer's bombs, Rodriguez realized that some decisions transcended regulations and protocol. Sometimes being a soldier meant choosing to do the right thing regardless of the potential consequences. "What do you need from us?" Rodriguez asked. Elena smiled for the first time since their conversation began. "I need professional backup for a direct assault on the engineer's primary facility. It's located in a cave complex about 12 kilometers from here, heavily defended, and requires precision shooting to neutralize the sentries without alerting the main force. When do we move?" "Tonight. The engineer is meeting with his suppliers to finalize the explosives transfer. It's the best opportunity. We'll have to catch him with evidence of his activities and prevent whatever attack he's planning." Rodriguez looked toward the ridgeline, where he knew Williams and the rest of his team were listening to every word. The mission Elena proposed was exactly the kind of high-risk operation that SEALs train for, but conducting it without official authorization represented a massive professional gamble. "Rodriguez," Williams' voice crackled through his earpiece. "It's your call. You know this woman better than any of us. Do you trust her?" Rodriguez studied Elena Martinez's face one more time, remembering her reputation for integrity and her record of successful operations. In a world full of uncertain loyalties and hidden agendas, she represented something increasingly rare, a soldier who could be trusted to do the right thing regardless of personal cost. "Ma'am, I trust her completely," Rodriguez replied, "and I think we need to take this mission. Then we'd better start planning," Williams said, "because if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right." As the afternoon sun began its descent toward the mountain peaks, 5 of America's most elite warriors began planning an operation that would either prevent a terrorist attack and bring a dangerous enemy to justice or end their military careers and possibly their lives. But for soldiers like Rodriguez and his team, some missions were worth any risk, and some enemies were too dangerous to leave unchallenged. The hunt for the engineer was about to reach its deadly conclusion, and Elena Martinez had just provided them with the key to victory they had been missing all along: the knowledge and experience of someone who had survived the worst the enemy could offer and emerged stronger than ever.